The presence of fine Attic vases in black and red figure technique and black glazed also is long-lasting in the territory of Central Macedonia and especially around the Thermaic Gulf. Their examination offers an important methodological tool for the general study of pottery, both local and imported in this area, also for the correlation with other groups of objects, and also for several issues relating to the social, economic, and ideological shaping of the settlements in ancient Macedonia during the Archaic and Classical periods. The settlements in the area of the Thermaic Gulf are to be found in the east, mainly in the regions of ancient Mygdonia and Chrysis, and also in the peninsula of Paline, today Cassandra and Chalkidiki, while in the northwest they are located in Votiea and in the southwest in Pieria. Particularly in the inner bay, many sites with a long life span from the early Iron Age to the Hellenistic period have been identified, and it is interesting that all these they were located in a relatively close proximity to each other, as is evident from the better investigated area of Thessaloniki and the neighboring municipalities, as you can see here on this map. And apologize for the Greek letters and the names, but you can see this proximity of the settlements. Attic black and red figure vases have been found together with other kinds of grave offerings, mainly in the cemeteries, which have been more extensively excavated, and less so in the settlements and the residential areas. When the latter is the case, this fine pottery coexists with transport amphoras and painted vases from other workshops and various finds either broken in deposit pits or more rarely in domestic and public areas. The foundation of several Greek colonies is a particular feature for the coastal zone of the Thermaic Gulf. In the colonies of Chalkidiki, the number of Attic painted vases is relatively limited, except from some urban and extra-urban sanctuaries, but it is more noticeable than in the inland settlements of this peninsula. Worth mentioning is the presence of some vases attributed to well-known painters of the black and red figure styles in a few burial sets in the cemeteries, mainly in the mentioned Greek colonies. I can name someone here from the earlier painter of Louvre 6, the Leagros group, Antimenes painter, the Rycroft painter, Gela painter, Pan painter, Berlin painter, Providence, and so on. In the region of Pieria, the cities of Pydna and Methoni offer even increasing numbers of Attic painted and black glazed vases. Although there are a few earlier examples from Methoni, the majority of Attic black figure in the area belongs to the late 6th and the early 5th century BC. For example, from the North Cemetery of Pydna, following the general trend observed mainly in the other necropolis of ancient Macedonia. Most common are the numerous perfume vases with standard black figure and silhouette decoration, and some shapes of symbolic vases such as cups, oinochoe, column craters. In the same period, there is also a systematic presence of red figure vases, often in good quality, attributed to specific Attic workshops, as the Baudouin painter, the Born painter, Misson, and early Manierist group. The contacts between these two cities and Athens were intensified and maintained throughout the whole classical period, as is shown by the large number and good quality of red figure and white ground vases found there. In Votiea, the settlement of Archontikon near Pella is part of the wider zone of the Thermaic Gulf. The Attic black figure vases found in many archaic graves in the western cemetery of Archontiko are of particular importance, and they will enrich our knowledge with new data on the circulation and significance of Attic pottery when they are published. I'll begin my presentation by first giving the general frame for the diachronic presence of Attic painted vases. In the Archaic period, the total number of imported Attic black figure vases was far below than the total quantity of the pottery and other artifacts coming from the workshops of Corinth and East Greece. The ratio begins to change from the last quarter of the 6th century BC onwards, when there is an increase in the number of Attic vases, black figure, black silhouette, black glazed, and later red figure in most of the sites under consideration. This increasing trend, which goes hand in hand with the strengthening of the Athenian political and commercial presence in the North Aegean, soon leads to the dominance of Attic pottery, as the production of painted vases in other workshops who were present in this region is gradually limited or even stopped. It is worth noting that after a decline in the second half of the 5th century BC, Attic red figure and black glazed vases appear again very frequently in the local towns, many of which are included now in the Macedonian kingdom. The earliest known examples of Attic black figure vases in the settlements that were situated in the coastal zone of the Thermaic Gulf are few and sporadic. Their presence, together with Attic transport amphoras of the SOS and Alabros types, is indicative of the role that these settlements played in the dissemination of pottery and other agricultural products from Attica, as well from various regions of southern and eastern Greece due to their geographical position. The Eretrian colony of Methoni on the west coast, and the port settlement of Karabournaki in Thessaloniki on the east, with large quantities of archaic pottery, are two typical cases from where imported pottery was distributed to neighboring and distant areas. These common entry points of Attic and other groups of pottery of various provenance allow us to identify common directions in terms of predominant pottery workshops, shapes, and iconographic decoration of the vessels in each period. Depending on the frequency and the exact places of discovery of the pottery found at each site, we can distinguish between central and peripheral settlements, which is also true for the imported Attic vases, taking, of course, into account the degree of archaeological investigation of each site. With the spread and consolidation of the Macedonian kingdom in central and eastern Macedonia, we can observe the increasing circulation of Attic painted and black glazed potteries in the whole Macedonian territory, especially during the 4th century BC, focusing on the capital of Pella and some other cities as Pydna and Amphipolis. Many red figure vases can be attributed to well-known painters, the Black Thyrsus painter, the Marsyas painter, wedding procession painter, painter of Athens 1472, Philotrano painter, the group G, Otshead group, Fat Boy group, etc., that we also know from many other areas in the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. Also noteworthy is the production of red figure vases of Skiphoi, Pelike, Lekanide, and Askoi in local workshops, such as in Olynthus and in Pella, during the 4th century BC under the Attic influence. Next, I'm going to focus on some vase shapes and their iconography that seem to be popular in the area under discussion. There is an obvious preference for medium and small-sized vessels, with few exceptions of larger vessels confirming the rule. This tendency is more evident in the later Archaic and early Classical periods, while in the later Classical periods, large vessels are more common. Drinking vessels dominate, appearing as early as the first quarter of the 6th century, with relatively few known examples of Comast and Siana cups. The gradual spread and predominance of Attic pottery in the second half of the 6th century BC is largely due to the circulation of little master cups, as you can see here, which are present at almost all known sites in Macedonia. Band cups were much more popular than lip cups. We can also notice the medium size of the cups and the prevalence of certain vase painters such as the Tleson, who is most known, runner's painter, elbows out painter, and Hermogenes. There are few specimens of other types of cups in this period, such as the castle and the drop type and the type A or I cup, while there are much more sub-A type and cup Skiphoi. In contrast to the variety and the larger number of cups, there are few examples of black figure Skiphoi known, dating mainly to the last quarter of the 6th and the early 5th century as Hermogenians, White Heron class of the CAG group and the dog group. The Skipho shape becomes much more popular later, and many red figure ones, type A and type B, appear not only in funerary but also in settlement assemblages. A particular group of drinking vessels are Camphoroi and Skiphoi of the St. Valentin class, which were widespread in many sites of the eastern and western Mediterranean in the 3rd quarter of the 5th century. Column craters are the most common vase shape compared to all other larger open and closed shapes. The number of black figure examples in some cemeteries is truly remarkable, as in Agia Paraskevy and Archondiko, while, as a rule, their presence remains sporadic in most known sites, in burials, in settlements, and in sanctuaries. The earlier known date from around the middle of 6th century and are attributed to Lydos and his circle, especially to the painter of Louvre F6. Many, however, are dated to the late 6th and the early 5th century as the Redi painter, the Mikra Karaburnu group. These craters of the second generation seem to continue the earlier workshop tradition of Lydos, probably following the same trade routes. The shape of the column crater is very popular in the first half of the 5th century, with several red figure examples attributed mainly to the early Manierist groups, and reveal the continuity in the preferences of the buyers in the place where they are found. At the same time, we also have local limitations of this vase shape with floral or without decoration. In red figure, there is also a strong preferences for bell and calyx craters, which are found in burial and settlement contexts from the second half of the 5th and mainly in the 4th century BC. It is characteristic that some closed vases of small size, such as black figure Lekitoi, Oinohoi, and Idriske in the last quarter of the 6th and the first half of the 5th century, seem to come from the same Attic workshops. I don't have to name examples here, so do not lose time. Something similar is observed in the vase, the shapes that we have also in red figure from the 5th and some the 4th century, for example, the Baudouin painter that we have separate in different places. There are few black figure pelike, but on the contrary, the late red figure pelike of the Kert style are widely spread both in the hinterland of central Macedonia and on the coast of the Thermaic Gulf and Chalkidiki until the last years of the Attic production of painted vases. Lekinthoi with black figure decoration constitute a large, perhaps the largest group of Attic imported vases. The earliest ones of the 6th century are found individually, while those of the early 5th century are found in larger assemblages. Also, there is usually a small number of them, only one piece or in pairs, in indigenous settlements, while there are much more numerous in the colonies and the other coastal areas. Many secondary type lekithoi, with or without white ground, dating to the first half of the 5th century, are found in tombs, are usually decorated with these typical floral and net patterns. These vases are attributed to the productive workshops of Hemon, Diosphos, and Megara painters, who also produced black figure lekithoi. The red figure lekithoi of standard and secondary type in the first half of the 5th century are rarer finds. They have generally small or medium size and are attributed to a limited number of painters, some of them well known in the Athenian Keramaikos, as these two examples from Aphitis attributed to the Pan and the Berlin painter. Most of the late perfume vases belong to the various groups of squat lekithoi with red figure or simple palmette and net motifs. White ground lekithoi are a particularly small category with funeral iconography dating back to the second half of the 6th century, and we only have very few examples from very certain places, as you can see here, and compare with the large number of lekithoi from Vergina I'm showing also. And some of them are also attributed to well-known vase painters as the Achilles painter, the woman painter, the trifid painter, and they must have a special significance in each case. As it is already been pointed out by many scholars, the pictorial decoration of the vases does not always seem to have been a decisive factor in their selection and use. Of course, in some cases, the possibility that the buyer's conscious preference for certain themes depicted on the vases cannot be ruled out, depending on their personal choices, the prevailing social and religious belief, or the established burial practices. According to the data known for the area under consideration, we can discern, on the one hand, a different management scheme for the dissemination and use of painted attic vases from the one that we know from other areas of widespread circulation, such as Etruria and Magna Graecia. And on the other hand, we note a common pattern in relation to neighboring Thrace and the Black Sea. Of course, there are variations depending on the individual time period, size, and importance of each settlement. In the case of Attic black figure vases, regardless of their shape, the depictions of animals, real and imaginary, dominate in various compositions. Particularly noteworthy are the large goats, panthers, and birds on the column craters, as well as some unusual marine creatures such as dolphins and octopuses. They exist also sirens and sphinx, and there are few depictions of lions. The identifiable mythological themes on black figure vases are quite limited. They can in no way compare with the variety and number of those depicted in the numerous Attic vases in other areas where their circulation was also systematic. There are a few representations that stand out, such as the handing of Chalcedonian boar that you see here, the judgment of Paris, some deeds of Heracles, the killing of the Minotaur by Theseus, Athena with the giant Enceladus, the Delia Triad, running gorgons, some heroes hoplites playing a board game, and standard Amazonomachis also. A special mention can be made on the representation of men wielding clubs on two column craters. Dionysus and his attendants are among the most common and therefore popular iconographic subjects. The god is depicted standing or seated between satyrs and maenads, and more rarely as a companion with Aphrodite and his Thyasos. On a band cap that you see here, found in the sanctuary of Poseidon in Posidi, Dionysus is depicted in the return of Hephaestus to Olympus, accompanied by satyrs and maenads on both sides of the vase. Original are certain black figure compositions with one or two winged female figures depicted in combination with standing or seated men, young and bearded. As you can see here, we have them on a Scianacap and column crater from Agia Paraskevii, on a Lekithos from Synthos, Skyphos from Archondiko, Oinochoe from Nea Mechaniona. Noteworthy is the various appearance and posture of these women in the scenes and the different shapes of vessels chosen to depict them. Regardless of the proposed interpretation of these winged figures as Heris, as Nike, as goddesses of childbirth, or demons with protective character, a particular preference is evident for such unusual features with supernatural properties. Attic red figure vases are not so plentiful, but some of them have interesting and even unusual mythological iconography related to various gods and heroes, such as Athena's and Poseidon's conflict, Eleusinian deities, the murder of Argos by Hermes, Poseidon's pursuit of a heroine, the duel of the Dioscuri and the Aphraids, Heracles with the lion of Nemea, the banquet of Heracles and Dionysos, but we have also plenty of daily life, such as banquets, musicians, horsemen, women's dances, and other wedding themes. The numerous scenes depicting Dionysus and his followers can be mentioned separately, among which the harvest and the pressing of grapes by satyrs on a column crater, and some other possible depictions of dithyramb and satyr play, all on craters of the 5th and 5th beginning of the 4th century, found in cemeteries of Pydna, stand out, and there are of particular interest. The scenes on red figure vases dating from the late 5th and mainly from the wall 4th century BC reveal the established and prevailing iconographic choices of the Attic workshops. For scenes from the world of Dionysus, we have, for example, the god's marriage with Ariadne, and Aphrodite, we also have Epiphania of the goddess, as well from the world of women, which apparently also appealed to local buyers. At the same time, there is also a particular preference for exotic themes with Amazons, griffins, and arimasps established in the Attic workshops of the 4th century BC due to the systematic trade of these vases in the remote areas of the Black Sea, on the route to which the settlements of Macedonia were accessible trading stations and also systematic recipients of Attic ceramic products. Muchas gracias por su atención.